Ladies and gentlemen, there are moments in life when the weight of financial struggles feels like an unmovable mountain. Bills pile up, opportunities seem to slip away, and a sense of lack threatens to overshadow our hope. Yet deep within our hearts, we know that we were not created to live in scarcity, but to walk in abundance, to thrive in the blessings that were divinely spoken over us since the beginning of time. Today, I want to share with you something far greater than a strategy or a plan. It is a spiritual key, a living word, a psalm that carries the power to unlock doors no man can shut. For generations, the psalms have been more than poetry. They have been divine declarations, weapons of faith, and songs of deliverance. When spoken with belief, they do not merely echo through the air, they shape reality. Think about it. Every word we release has energy, and when those words are infused with God's promises, they shift the atmosphere around us. The psalm we will reflect upon today holds within it a principle of divine provision, a reminder that our help does not come from the economy, nor from the opinions of men, but from the Lord who made heaven and earth. I invite you to imagine what could change if, instead of repeating words of fear or doubt, you began to declare words of power, words that align with divine abundance. What if, in the moments when your bank account looks empty, your heart was full of faith? What if, in the face of debt, you dared to speak the words that call forth provision, favor, and breakthrough? You see, financial freedom is not just a dream for the few, it is the birthright of those who choose to walk in trust, obedience, and faith. This psalm is not just a collection of verses, it is a spiritual doorway. And when you speak it, not as empty words but as a declaration of trust, you step into a rhythm of grace where closed doors swing open, where opportunities arise out of nowhere, and where provision flows in ways you could never have predicted. What is impossible for man becomes possible for God. So as we journey into this message, open your heart, let go of the fear that has held you back. Release the doubt that whispers you will never have enough, because today you are about to discover that your voice, your faith, and your willingness to declare the promises of God can shift the course of your financial future. This psalm is more than words, it is a key. And once spoken with faith, it has the power to unlock a financial breakthrough that will not only bless you, but overflow into the lives of those around you. The power of spoken words shapes financial reality, because words are not merely sounds that pass through the air, they are carriers of energy, intention, and faith. Every word released from the mouth is like a seed planted into the soil of life, and just as seeds grow and produce fruit, so too do words manifest into reality. Many people underestimate the weight of their speech, not realizing that their current financial struggles often reflect the words they have spoken over themselves in moments of fear, doubt, or despair. When someone says, "I will never get out of debt," or "money always slips away from me," they are unknowingly setting boundaries for their future. The spiritual law of words is clear. What you repeatedly declare with belief begins to shape the environment you live in. This is why the psalm holds such power. When you take words already infused with divine promise and speak them with conviction, you align yourself with a higher order of reality. These words carry authority because they are not born of human effort, but of God's eternal truth. In declaring them, you are not simply reciting, you are stepping into agreement with divine abundance and rejecting the mindset of lack. Just as light dispels darkness, faith-filled words spoken aloud dismantle the shadows of poverty and usher in the light of provision. Consider how creation itself began, not with labor, not with effort, but with words. "Let there be light," and there was light. The universe responded to the voice of God, and in the same way, your circumstances respond to your voice when it is rooted in faith. Financial doors may appear closed, but words spoken with authority have the ability to unlock them. Opportunities that seem hidden can be drawn into your path because you have chosen to speak words that attract abundance rather than repel it. The mind often reflects the words it hears most frequently. When your inner dialogue is filled with defeat, your actions follow that path, leading you into cycles of lack. But when your mouth begins to declare provision, when your lips repeat the promises of God through the psalm, your mindset begins to shift. You start to believe what you are saying, and belief fuels action. Suddenly, you are no longer paralyzed by fear of failure, but you step into situations expecting favor, expecting opportunity, expecting increase. And as expectation rises, reality aligns with the vision you have spoken into existence. Financial reality is never shaped solely by numbers on a page. It is shaped by faith, mindset, and the words released over your life. When words of lack dominate, the atmosphere becomes heavy with limitation. But when words of blessing and abundance take center stage, the atmosphere shifts, creating an environment where miracles can happen. Every declaration is a building block, every spoken promise a brick laid in the foundation of your financial breakthrough. Psalms carry divine promises of provision and abundance because they are not ordinary writings, they are inspired words that flow directly from the heart of God. Each psalm was birthed out of moments of deep struggle, triumph, faith, and worship, which means they carry within them a spiritual weight that transcends time. When a psalm speaks of the Lord being our shepherd, or the Lord being our refuge, it is more than poetry. It is a covenant promise that God will guide, protect, and provide. These words are not bound by the limitations of circumstance, but they extend into every area of life, including financial provision. They remind us that our security does not rest on unstable economies or fleeting opportunities, but on the unchanging faithfulness of the Creator. When a psalm declares that the righteous will never be forsaken, nor their children begging for bread, it speaks directly to the human fear of lack. These promises act as an anchor for the soul in times of financial pressure, assuring the believer that scarcity is not the final word. They assure us that just as God provided manna in the wilderness, He can open avenues of provision even in the most barren seasons of life. The Psalms transform fear into faith because they are rooted in God's proven character. Every declaration of abundance within them is not wishful thinking, it is a spiritual reality waiting to be unlocked through trust and repetition. The reason these divine promises are so powerful is that they connect earthly need with heavenly supply. When you speak a psalm aloud, you are bridging the gap between the unseen and the seen, calling forth provision from the invisible realm into the visible world. These verses are not passive, they are active instruments of transformation. A psalm that praises God as the one who owns the cattle on 1,000 hills is reminding you that there is no shortage in heaven, and because you belong to Him, lack cannot define your destiny. Abundance as described in the Psalms is not only about material wealth, but also about peace, stability, and joy that no amount of money can purchase. Yet, when these promises are embraced, they inevitably impact the financial dimension of life as well, because God's blessing encompasses the whole person. Speaking these psalms with conviction creates an atmosphere of expectation, and expectation attracts the fulfillment of what has been promised. This is why people throughout history have turned to them in times of need, because they hold within them keys to unlock breakthroughs that human reasoning cannot explain. The Psalms carry a rhythm of trust and surrender, teaching that abundance does not flow from anxious striving, but from resting in divine provision. They remind the soul that to align with God's promises is to step into a current of blessing that never runs dry, a stream of provision that flows even in deserts, ensuring that those who hold fast to His word will always find supply. Faith-filled declarations unlock spiritual and material doors, because faith is the channel through which the unseen becomes visible, and the spoken word is the vehicle that carries belief into reality. When a person declares with conviction what they know to be true in God's word, they are not merely expressing hope, they are activating the power of heaven in their life. Words spoken in faith have the ability to pierce through obstacles, to shift circumstances, and to invite opportunities that otherwise remain hidden. This is why financial breakthroughs often begin not with strategies or plans, but with a declaration of trust in God's promises spoken boldly and consistently. Faith-filled declarations require a heart aligned with belief. They are not empty repetitions of words, but expressions of trust in the one who owns everything and knows every need. When you speak a psalm or a promise over your finances, you are aligning yourself with divine authority, acknowledging that your source is not in human understanding, but in God Himself. The power lies not in the sound of your voice, but in the faith behind it. When you declare God's provision with certainty, you are inviting divine intervention into situations that appear impossible, opening doors that were once firmly closed, and dismantling barriers that seemed insurmountable. This practice transforms the very atmosphere around you. Faith-filled words carry energy that influences not only the speaker but also the environment. When spoken consistently, they shift negative conditions, changing fear into confidence, lack into expectation, and limitation into possibility. Those who have experienced true breakthrough understand that the turning point often comes not through human effort alone, but through persistent declarations of what God has already promised. By repeatedly speaking these truths, the believer creates a spiritual alignment where the unseen begins to manifest in the tangible world, and what once felt unreachable becomes accessible. Faith-filled declarations also cultivate resilience. In moments of doubt or discouragement, returning to declarations of God's promises strengthens the spirit and reinforces trust. The very act of speaking with faith reminds the believer of God's character and faithfulness, anchoring hope in His unchanging nature. It is through these declarations that believers overcome the mental and emotional chains of scarcity, fear, and limitation. They transform thought patterns, reprogram expectation, and prepare the mind and heart to recognize and receive opportunities that might have otherwise been overlooked. Every spoken word of faith carries the potential to unlock a new reality. It is a spiritual key that opens doors both seen and unseen, creating pathways for provision, favor, and success. When you declare what God has promised, you are stepping into alignment with a higher order of reality, where blessings flow according to divine timing and wisdom. Material doors swing open, ideas are birthed, resources appear, and divine connections are established, all as a result of a voice that dares to speak God's truth over life and circumstance. Faith-filled declarations are not simply acts of hope, they are intentional, powerful acts of spiritual authority. Each time you speak with faith, you participate in the co-creation of your future, inviting the miraculous to intersect with the ordinary and opening avenues for financial and spiritual breakthroughs that no human strategy could achieve alone. Trusting God shifts focus from scarcity to divine supply, because when faith becomes the lens through which we view life, our perspective transforms completely. Scarcity is often a mindset, a way of thinking that convinces the heart that resources are limited, that opportunities are few, and that survival depends solely on human effort. But when we place our trust in God, we recognize that His provision is limitless, that He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills, and that nothing is too difficult for Him to supply. This trust reshapes the way we perceive our circumstances, allowing us to move from a mindset of lack to one of expectation, hope, and abundance. Trusting God requires surrender, a willingness to release the anxious grip we often place on finances and outcomes. It means acknowledging that our understanding is limited, but His wisdom is infinite. When we surrender, we are no longer driven by fear or desperation. Instead, we operate from a place of faith, knowing that God is actively working on our behalf. This shift in perspective changes the way we respond to challenges, making us proactive in seeking solutions, while confident that provision is already on the way. The very act of trusting Him invites His guidance, favor, and intervention into situations that may have seemed hopeless. A heart anchored in trust sees opportunities where the fearful see obstacles. Scarcity often narrows vision, focusing attention on what is missing rather than what is available. But when we trust God, our eyes open to possibilities we might have overlooked. Doors begin to appear that were once invisible, connections arise that were previously unnoticed, and ideas emerge that lead to breakthrough. Trust allows us to step forward with confidence, knowing that God's supply will meet our needs, and that we are not navigating life's challenges alone. Trusting God also transforms our inner dialogue. The words we speak over our own lives shift from, "I can't," and "there's never enough," to declarations of faith and assurance. As we meditate on His promises and speak them aloud, we reinforce our trust, gradually replacing doubt with confidence. This creates a spiritual rhythm in our lives where hope becomes habitual, expectation becomes natural, and our faith begins to shape our reality. The more we practice this trust, the more we see that divine supply is not just a concept but a tangible reality, manifesting in ways both large and small. Financial breakthroughs often follow this shift because abundance flows where faith is established. When scarcity dominates the heart, it blocks the flow of provision. But when trust takes root, God's favor is invited, resources are aligned, and breakthroughs occur in ways beyond human comprehension. Trust does not mean passivity. It means actively partnering with God, walking in obedience and speaking His promises into existence while relying on His timing and wisdom. As trust deepens, the fear of not having enough diminishes, replaced by the certainty that God's supply is sufficient, overflowing, and unstoppable. Trusting God transforms not only our finances but our entire approach to life. It shifts the focus from what we lack to what is already provided, creating a mindset of abundance, peace, and confidence. It enables us to act boldly, speak with authority, and live with a certainty that provision is not just possible, it is guaranteed for those who place their confidence in His unfailing promises. Speaking the psalm activates breakthrough beyond human limitations because it moves the believer from passive hope into active participation with God's power. When a psalm is spoken with faith, it is more than a recitation, it becomes a declaration that aligns the heart, mind, and spirit with divine authority. Human understanding is limited, constrained by circumstances, timelines, and resources, but when we declare the words of God, we tap into a realm where limits do not exist. Speaking the psalm aloud bridges the gap between the visible and invisible, calling forth solutions, provision, and opportunities that transcend what the human eye can see or the human mind can calculate. The act of speaking these sacred words is an exercise in faith that shifts energy, both spiritually and practically. Each verse carries weight and each declaration reinforces the belief that God is at work behind the scenes. When repeated consistently, these words become more than statements. They become spiritual catalysts that open doors no one else can open. It is through the voice that faith is released into action. The moment you speak with conviction, you invite divine power to intervene, to reorder circumstances, and to create pathways that were previously blocked. Human limitations often create a sense of frustration and hopelessness. We see obstacles as insurmountable, debts as unending, and opportunities as few. Yet when a psalm is spoken with faith, it reminds us that God's power is not constrained by the same limitations. What seems impossible to man becomes possible with God, and our declarations are the mechanism through which this divine possibility is activated. Speaking the psalm transforms perception, turning impossibilities into potential and challenges into opportunities for God's intervention. Consistent declaration also shapes the inner life of the believer. Speaking the psalm reinforces trust, builds confidence, and strengthens resolve. It trains the mind to focus on God's promises rather than human circumstances. Fear, doubt, and anxiety begin to lose their grip as faith-filled words take precedence, creating an internal environment where breakthrough can flourish. The spoken word cultivates expectation, and expectation is the fertile ground in which miracles take root. By repeatedly declaring the psalm, the believer aligns both spiritually and mentally with the reality of divine provision, preparing to receive what has already been promised. The spoken psalm is a key that unlocks hidden potential and unseen resources. Doors that were once firmly closed begin to open, connections that were invisible become apparent, and ideas that were dormant awaken into action. Breakthrough is not limited to financial gain alone, it also encompasses clarity, favor, wisdom, and opportunities that human effort alone could never produce. Speaking the psalm positions the believer to participate in a divine exchange, where faith-filled words meet God's limitless power, producing results that defy ordinary expectations. Every time a psalm is spoken with belief, it challenges the boundaries of human limitation. It elevates the soul above fear, turns despair into hope, and transforms ordinary circumstances into extraordinary outcomes. Speaking these words with faith is not a passive exercise, it is an active partnership with God that propels the believer into a reality where divine provision flows freely, and breakthrough occurs on a level that surpasses what the natural mind could conceive.